So they finally announced some of the changes that they're going to be making in the Ret Rework. Now, none of these are definitive because these are just things that they data mined, but some of these could probably be in the final version of the spec. It looks like they're planning on making it so that Ret has two builds that they can go between. One is a more ranged single target build, and the other is a melee AoE consistent build. But let's just start talking about some of the abilities now. So first off, Answered Prayer. When you're below 40% health, you cast a free wall on yourself. So it's kind of like Shaman Nature's Guardian. So whenever we get low, we get like a nice little heal on ourselves. I wonder if it's going to be modified by Healing Hands or if Healing is even going to still be in the game. Next up, just good old Blade of Justice, same old, but they're also giving us a talent that makes it so that is AoE, which could work for kind of more of a cleavy AoE build, which could be really good into double melee. I'm not really going to be talking about PvE because I don't really care about it, but it could have good instances in Mythic Plus, I guess. Next up, Blade of Light. Divine Storm now deals both physical and holy damage. So that's a thing that they're doing for a lot of Ret abilities. They're making it so that they both deal magic and physical damage. This could be really good into things like DK, since we will be able to do actual damage through AMS, and also other things that have specific damage reductions like Monks and Diffuse. Now I'm not sure how it's going to end up working though. Are they going to end up like making it so half the damage is physical and half the damage is magic? Or are they making it so there's a second instance of damage that is now also physical? Depending on how they do this, this could be really interesting. And there's also apparently a lot more physical damage modifiers that we're going to be getting. So I wonder if the physical part of the damage is going to be doing more than the holy damage. I'm not sure. Next up, Crusader Strike generates 1 additional holy power. That's kind of cool. So now it'll generate 2, I think. Unless there's already something that does this. But yeah, that's insane. We'd have way better holy power generation, since now Crusader Strike is going to be generating just as much holy power as something like Blade of Justice. So we're just going to have a lot more holy power uptime. Then again, for the melee AoE, we have Blessed Champion. Crusader Strike now hits 2 additional nearby targets. So this makes it so that we have more cleave just on our builders also. Next up is Blessed Hammers. So this is the Protection Paladin ability that makes it so that we have kind of like hammers spinning around us. Kind of like the hammers build back in Legion. I don't know how hard it's going to end up actually hitting, but it could be good into cleave situations, but it might not be the best depending on how hard it is to get. Next up, they're making it so that Boundless Judgment is no longer RNG, and it will always jump to an additional 2 targets. Looks like they just kind of did it twice, but this is really cool. I hate how RNG a lot of the Ret things are right now. Making them more consistent so that you know what's going to be happening makes it a lot easier to balance around, and also just makes it a lot better overall. Next up, Crusader's Reprieve. Crusader Strike now deals 10% increased damage and heals you for 3% of your maximum health. This could be really good because this makes it so that when we're taking a lot of damage, we can then use Crusader Strikes to get wogs up, so we can end up getting even more healing off in situations where we're taking a lot of damage, especially now when paired with it giving us 2 holy power instead of 1. It'll make it so that we have a lot more sustain when we need it. Next up, Crusader Strikes. Now, I'm not really sure about this one, because this kind of is just giving us Demon Hunter Demon Blades, and I don't know, it looks kind of weird. I wonder if it's gonna work with the AoE builds, or AoE Crusader Strike attacks are gonna be AoE. It could be interesting, depending on some changes. There's some other changes down that could make it so that we do not actually ever need to use Crusader Strike. There's one that makes it so that after we use Final Verdict, we then instantly reset Blade of Justice, so we can kind of just spam between those two a lot. But it's kind of an interesting one. I'd have to test it to see how it's going to end up working. The problem is with Ret compared to Demon Hunter can pool up a lot more resources to spend them later. Ret only can get up to 5. So kind of just randomly getting 2 holy power at certain times can be kind of weird. If it's consistent, if it actually is every 10 seconds, you can, I guess, track around and play around it, but I'm not really so sure. I think maybe actually using Crusader Strike might be better, but we'll have to see. Passive damage could be really good. Next up, they made it so that instead of having a 12% chance of resetting Blade of Justice, you have a 20% chance. I think this might be wrong. I think this is supposed to be for the Divine Storm procs, and they're increasing the rate of that, but it's just taken incorrectly, because I mean it says Divine Storm. So maybe, because like the way it works right now is Crusader Strike has a chance of resetting the cooldown of Divine Storm. So maybe they are kind of mixing it up because of the melee Crusader Strike, that is now making it so that melee attacks reset Blade of Justice instead of Divine Storm, but it's probably still going to be Divine Storm. This one's kind of hard to tell, but if they're just increasing the rate of getting Divine Storm and also making it based off auto attacks, that is amazing. For now, I'm not going to really worry about that. Next up is Expurgation. This is another one of those ones where they're making it more consistent rather than having it be a increased damage on proc. So they're making it so that it no longer procs on critical strikes, it just procs always. So now, if you press Blade of Justice, you're pretty much getting an extra 60% damage of burn damage whenever you press it, which is really good, depending on how hard Blade of Justice is going to be hitting. But then when you pair it with the AoE Blade of Justice, the Blade of Vengeance, it could be really strong, just giving us a lot of cleave burn damage. There's also another talent farther down that increases our overtime effects, so this could be really interesting. Next up, Hammer and Anvil. This one was kind of weird to me. You just radiate holy damage when you have Divine Steed up. I don't think this is going to be really good in PvP, unless it's like a free talent to get for the AoE build, and it actually does like decent damage. But for the most part, you don't really care about doing damage while using Divine Steed, because most of the time when you're using Divine Steed, it is when you're trying to get back to someone or get away from someone. Next up, Healing Burst. Divine Storm now heals you for some percent of your maximum health. I think there was a different version where it was like 5%. So now for that instance where I was talking about where you're taking a lot of damage and you're Crusader striking for the heal, you can now Divine Storm instead of using WOG, making it so that you can still do damage and heal at the same time. This could be good just to give us some free sustain when we're trying to just cleave people with Divine Storm, which is pretty cool. High Lord's Judgment. Judgment and Hammer of Wrath deal more damage, and High Lord's Judgment is in a different icon. Judgment now deals physical damage. The top one, you know, it's just a simple modifier. That would be kind of cool for the range build because you're also getting Hammer of Wrath damage. But then the bottom one, this is interesting because you have to see, because the weird thing in making a lot of our abilities work off of physical damage is it makes it so that our mastery doesn't really work. So I'm wondering if they might be reworking Ret's mastery to make it not just buff holy damage. We'll have to see. I'm not really sure. But also, I mean, you have to kind of just see. If physical damage is doing more than holy damage in certain instances, then this could be good. You'll probably still want to have the holy damage against things that are high armor, like warriors. But in certain situations where you don't really care about the armor aspect of the ability, you can go the physical damage one, or against DK, so you can do damage through AMS. Next up, we have High Lord's Judgment again. They just don't have the actual names of the abilities yet, probably. It's going to make it so that our next 2 holy power spending abilities have increased damage. So right now, how it is, you know, you put Judgment up, then your next Templars or whatever is going to be doing increased damage. Now it's going to make it so that the next 2 do increased damage, which is kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting because it looks like we're having a lot more holy power generation with Crusader Strike giving us 2 holy power, so it's going to give us a lot more instances to pump out more finishers. This could make it so that this ability is going to end up being really good, and we're going to have actually want more almost. Next up, Holy Crusader. Blade of Justice now deals both physical and holy damage once again. This time they're changing the physical ability to do holy damage, which could be kind of good into some things like warriors or other things that have high armor in certain situations, or just physical damage reduction. Next up, we have Holy Prism. This is an old ability that I think we had in MOP. So if you look at it, it's kind of like an AoE instant ability that does a bit of damage or a bit of healing. Now we have to see how much it's actually going to be doing, because if it's actually a decent heal, it could be pretty nice because it's a pretty short cooldown. Just every 20 seconds you can do a little AoE heal into raw situations. Or if you're playing into a melee cleave and you want to cleave them down, you can just do a little AoE bit of damage on them also. I'm not sure how good it's going to be. You gotta kind of just test the numbers before you know if it's ever worth using. Next up, this is a really interesting one. Improved Blade of Justice. Blade of Justice now has 2 charges. So it looks like we're going to be able to press Blade of Justice way more. This could be really interesting, especially with the AoE Blade of Justice build. It could be doing quite a bit of damage, and especially now that also we have the Expurgation also always triggering off of Blade of Justice. This could be really interesting. This could be like a lot of good consistent damage, which is really cool. Next up is one that I thought was really cool. Every 3 seconds, gain 5% increased damage to your next Divine Storm, stacking up to 10 times. So that means every 30 seconds, your Divine Storm is going to be dealing 50% increased damage. And if you remember, we have a talent currently that makes it so that after we use Judgment, our next Divine Storm is tied into our Templar. So if we still have that, and it's also a 30-second cooldown, every 30 seconds, we could be doing a pretty big burst of damage with the Templar's Divine Storm ability. But I'm not sure if we're going to still have that ability. They haven't really said anything about it, so we will have to see. Next up, a really cool one. Judgment now slows enemies for 30%. This is something that Ret's been needing for a really, really long time. They just needed a consistent slow they can keep on targets. And now it looks like we're getting that. Now 30% isn't that much, but it's better than nothing for sure. Just having some kind of slow is really good. And then if you pair it with the AoE Judgment, or if we have Divine Toll, we have just way more ways to keep our slow down and make it more consistent on multiple targets. This could be really, really good for the spec. Next up, this is one that I thought was absolutely insane. Jurisdiction. Templar's Verdict, Blade of Justice deal 10% increase to damage. And also, Templar's Verdict, Blade of Justice, and Hammer of Justice range is increased to 25 yards. This is kind of crazy. This is pretty much going to make it so that we can be a straight up like range class pretty much. We have the same range as Evokers, and our Judgment already has pretty long range. I think it's about 30 yards. So we can pretty much do everything except for Crusader Strike from a range with this. Then on this build, you could also go the passive Crusader Strike, so you're not even having to use Crusader Strike at all, making it so that you're getting passive Holy Power generation from that, and just like pumping out a bunch of Templars with that from a range, and just it's really sounds gonna be OP. Also having increased Hodge range. Thank God, I've been wanting this for so long. Tying it into a PvP talent like we've had for so long is just so annoying because we're so starved for PvP talents right now. I think this is going to be a really, really cool build. I think this is probably going to be one of the like capstones though, because it seems like a really like major ability. So you're probably not going to be able to get, you're probably going to be losing something big to get this, but it could be really good, especially into ranged mashups where you're going to be able to do damage even while getting kited. Next up is another really honestly cool one. Flash of Light is instant and does 50% increase healing, but it now has a 6-second cooldown. This everything about this is like a win. It does more healing, it's instant, but it has a cooldown. There's not too many situations where you're taking a lot of damage where you're just spamming Flash of Light and it's gonna save you because you're just gonna get interrupted or CC'd or something during it, and it's not really gonna end up getting any healing off. This just makes it so that we have a lot more on-demand healing, which is absolutely insane. And then when you pair it with Light Celerity, which causes it to reduce the damage, reduce the cooldown of Blade of Justice by 4 seconds, it makes it so that in situations where, it makes it so that in the range build where you're, have a situation where you're low on Holy Power, you just toss out a heal, you get your Blade of Justice reset proc, and then you can just start keeping doing damage. It makes it so that we kind of just have, it kind of makes us work similar to Feral Druids, where a lot of times after they use their finisher, they then need to toss some regrowth on someone. Now we're going to have it so that after we use Blade of Justice, we're going to have to toss a Flash of Light on people. Next up, we have Lion Strength, Crusader Strike, and Templar's Verdict critical strike chance increased by 5%, and the critical strike damage increased by 10%. This is kind of interesting. This might make it so Rets need to actually start building crit damage. Assuming that we're still going to be having the increased crit during wings also, so this will make it so that our burst goes are very scary, since we're going to be doing even more crit damage on those abilities. Also, that makes it seem like Crusader Strike might actually do some pretty big damage, because they're actually just specifically modifying it in this ability. Next up, we have Light Forge Blessing. So I think this is actually the old Divine Storm one that we saw earlier. It increases the damage of Divine Storm by 10% and also heals nearby allies for 5% of their maximum health. So I think this is what that one was up above and what the healing actually is. I kind of wish that they made it so that it did more healing for the more enemies you hit with Divine Storm. That'd be kind of interesting, but can't get everything. Next up, Mark of the Silver Hand. Strength and stamina increased by 10%. The strength probably won't matter too much because it's just going to be what we're going to be having. We're just going to have this all the time. But the increased stamina will make us a little bit tankier, which is really nice. This is also probably going to be a definite must-have pick talent. Next up is Martial Training. Physical damage increased by 20%. So this is what's going to buff a lot of those physical damage changes that we have above. Things that make it so Judgment is physical damage, make it so that Divine Storm does physical damage. This is going to be what makes those do more damage. Now the question is this 20% increased damage going to make it so that they are better when they're physical rather than holy? We will have to see. Oh, there's also just a straight up buff to Blade of Justice because it buffs its damage by 20% also, which is really cool. Next up, I'm not really sure with this multi-hit proc for Divine Storm. I think they just have the wrong name, so I'm not sure. Or Divine Toll. Next up, they have reduced the cooldown of Judgment by 0 seconds, Precision Strike by 0 seconds. I think this is also just right here. It's the Physical Judgment test. It reduces the cooldown of Judgment by 2 seconds and Precision Strike by 1 second. This makes it so that our Judgment is a much shorter cooldown. Right now, our equivalent of this talent reduces the cooldown of Judgment by 1 second, so a lot of times just people don't take it. But now that's reducing by 2 seconds and also Precision Strike by 1 second, it could actually be really good to pick up. There's also Penitence, which increases the damage of your periodic effects by 50%. We don't really have too many. I think that would be like Expurgation, and honestly, that is all I can think of. Maybe the AoE Hammers and Conk, if we still have Conk. But yeah, those are kind of the only things that I can see that are periodic effects. So yeah, I'm not really sure about this one ever being actually usable. Next up, we have Physical Presence. Crusader Strike and Blade of Justice deal 20% increased critical strike damage, and your auto attack critical strike chance decreased by 10%. This is once again pushing us towards the kind of crit aspect of the kit, so maybe Ret's going to actually be stacking quite a bit of crit once this patch happens. We will have to see. And then a really cool one, Punishment. Successfully interrupting enemy with Rebuke, cast Templar's Verdict. This is going to be really good when you're hitting a caster that actually casts, something like a Shadow Priest or a Warlock. You're not going to really want it into most physical DPS, except for maybe Demon Hunters. You can kick Ivy and get free Templars off on them. That would be kind of cool. Also, if you're doing like a swap on a healer, you can do a nice kick to start the swap and then start doing big damage on them. So this is a kind of interesting ability. If you suck at kicking, like I do, it's not going to be the best, but yeah, this will give everyone who plays Red a good reason to get good at kicking. These are just holy changes that I see. Next up, Righteous Cause. Final Verdict has a 100% chance of resetting the cooldown of Blade of Justice. Now this could be really... So this is what I was talking about earlier, where when you use Templars, you get Blade of Justice reset, so you can kind of just spam those two abilities like a lot, especially when you're playing the ranged build. But they haven't really mentioned Final Verdict anywhere, so I'm not sure what's going to be up with that. Next up, they are still having the increased damage on Blade of Justice after using Holy Power, which is kind of cool. Next up, we have a new thing, Seal Protection. What it's going to be doing is going to be buffing the shield of Divine Protection by 10%, and also the shielding effect of Shield of Vengeance by 30%. So this is going to make us a lot tankier in situations where we have those up. Right now, it feels like Shield of Vengeance is just paper, it just gets burned through instantly. Divine Protection is also... Now, I'm wondering if the Divine Protection change is going to be waiting for it to be at the 30% it is right now. So this will turn it into a 40% wall. That would be really cool. Hopefully, if they do this, they do end up making it so Divine Protection is the same cooldown as Shield of Vengeance, so that we don't have to just pick Shield of Vengeance every single time, just because it's a way shorter cooldown, you have it up way more consistently. Because I think Divine Protection is honestly a lot better in most situations, but we just can't go it a lot of the time because it's just such a long cooldown. This could be a really good defensive change for Ret though. Next up, we already talked about this, the increased damage to Blade of Justice. For some reason they just have it twice as something else. Next up we have Searing Light. We already talked about this, I think that was with the 20% physical damage up above. Stay of Execution. Execution Sends last 6 seconds longer. So I'm not sure if this is actually going to be good in PvP. Because a lot of the time in PvP, the way you use Execution Sends is you have it so that it lines up perfectly to happen at the same time as you do something else, or like right when they get out of a stun, just so you have kind of like finisher damage. But increasing the duration makes it so that yes, you can stack more damage into it, so it's going to hit harder, but I don't think it's actually going to matter that much because the damage that you pad into it, it's only 10% of the damage that it absorbs. So I don't know, we'll have to see. I also saw that they're potentially reducing the cooldown of it to 45 seconds rather than a minute, so I'm not sure about this one. Yeah, we're going to the next thing. So this was the modifier that they were showing for the Divine Storm reset, but it looks like it's actually is going to be for the Blood of Justice proc. So pretty much what they're just doing is they're making it so that the proc chance of it is increased so that we get more Blood of Justice proc, which is pretty nice. Next up, this is a pretty crazy one. They're pretty much making it so that Justicar's Verdict is a passive for Templars. It's going to be dealing 10% increased damage, heal you for 100% of the damage it deals, and also do 50% increased damage while stunned. This will be absolutely broken if this actually comes out. I feel like they're gonna definitely have to modify this at least in some way, because because I don't know, it looks like Templar's gonna be doing a lot of our damage because we're gonna be able to spam a lot more holy power. So we're just gonna be having constant healing going on the entire time. This might have to be looked at, but if this comes out as is, this is gonna be absolutely insane. Next up, they're changing Truth's Wake a tiny bit. Pretty much the only difference is they're making the dot longer, and they're also making it so that it does probably more damage. It's based off your attack power rather than how much damage the Wake of Ashes did. And I think it looked like it was doing more from comparing the numbers, because right now it's doing 10% of Wake of Ash damage, and Wake of Ashes is doing like 350 attack power. So technically this is going to be doing over 50% of Wake of Ashes damage as a dot. So this could actually be really good, especially in melee situations where you can get multiple targets with this and just get some more rock cleave going. This is also something that can get buffed by that one talent we were talking about that increases your dot damage. So it could be interesting. Next up, they're changing Vanquish's momentum. Rather than having a stacking holy power damage buff, it is increasing the critical chance on targets below 20% health for your Hammer of Wrath, and also it generates an additional holy power, I think, when they're in that execute range. So it gives you more of a reason to press Hammer of Wrath when players are low, which is really cool because I like having reasons to press Hammer of Wrath. It should be kind of like an execute. Next up, they're making some tiny changes to Wake of Ashes. They're just making it so that it has 2 yards more range. That's about it. And also, I think they are buffing the slow aspect of it. They're just showing Truth's Wake here. Oh, yeah, here it is. They're increasing the slow duration time to 10 seconds rather than 5 seconds, which can be really nice for keeping up on targets. And now the last few changes, they're just saying that again. And Zealot's Favor. Auto attack speed increased by 20%, and auto attacks heal you for 1% of your maximum health. Now this could be really, really good because, especially now, I'm not sure if we're gonna still have Zeal, but if we paired this with Zeal, whenever we would use Judgment, we'd be getting so much bonus healing just from how fast we auto attack. So this could be really, really interesting. It looks like Ret's getting a lot more just melee sustain, Crusader Strike heals, Templars heals, auto attacks heals, and then on the flip side, we're also getting a lot more range things. We're getting increased Blade of Justice damage, increased range for Blade of Justice, increased range for Hodge, increased range for Templars. So it's going to be really, really cool. I like all these changes. The only thing that I'm concerned on is we haven't seen anything for mobility, but a lot of it won't matter too much because since we're getting increased range, we're not going to be needing as much mobility as we would if we were just straight up having to be melee the entire time. And in the situations where we're going the not range build, we're not going to really need the mobility either because we're kind of just going to want to be sitting there, cleaving, hitting as many targets as we can, and it's usually going to be used against targets who can't move too much anyways. But yeah, so far these changes are really good. I am really excited for everything else that they end up adding, but so far it's looking really good, and I'm really excited for them to actually release it. Yeah, that's it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed. Peace.